disrespect is normalized in our culture. It just becomes the norm. And what happens is it lowers the expectations we have even for our own kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is just what teens do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so pervasive, it's all around us. So then
Yeah.
it just is normalized.
Yeah.
And then we don't take it as seriously as we should take it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the kind of stuff we have to think about in terms of culture and culture shaping us and influencing us on this particular issue. Well, it's time to come clean, Erin. We need to admit to our listening audience that we actually used to have 6 kids.
What?
Don't laugh it off. Yeah, we had 6 kids. One of them during their teenage years was disrespectful to you, and they've never been heard from again. That's the way that you handle disrespect. You just wipe them from the face of this earth. And so I want to talk about that with Erin today. No, we want to hit a very big topic, important topic.
Mm.
This is a big question that moms and dads and grandparents and teachers are all asking. How do you deal with disrespectful teenagers?
Can you just clear up that you were joking about this? That I've never actually
Yes, I was
murdered?
joking. We didn't have 6 kids. We had 7.
only
2
birthed
of them were disrespectful.
Now, I have threatened to murder the kids,
Yeah.
but
And
I've
that's going to
never
be in
actually...
our first parenting book is how murderous threats help get your children to behave.
How they work really well.
Yeah. No. Yes. I'll just clarify. Erin has only given birth to 5 children. But
Only.
Look-
I mean, that seems kind of...
well, only compared to 6.
I mean, that was a lot.
That was a lot. I'm not negating that.
Okay,
Look how
you're
you
getting
just
off on a tangent.
how you turned what I said into a negative. This is a common theme in our relationship. All right. We got to laugh a lot here because there's going to be a lot of tears and crying in this episode because we've all dealt with disrespectful teens. We were once.
Unless your kids are not teens yet, and then you've dealt
it's
with disrespectful toddlers.
It's coming. It is coming. We have been disrespectful. At least you have been a disrespectful teen. I've talked to your mom, and she's shared some
This
stories.
is true.
No, we've
true.
all. It's common, and but it's something that all parents want to figure out how to best deal with.
Mhm.
And now let's just acknowledge there is so much bad parenting advice out there. And a lot of us, like when we're exasperated and we get desperate and we want some advice and counsel, oftentimes, first thing we'll do is we will search it on the internet
Mhm.
and to find out what collective wisdom of the ages is present there. And what you find is a lot of bad parenting advice.
Mhm.
In fact, one of the more viewed videos on YouTube about this particular issue is from a lady. Her name is Coach M. She is a certified life coach. And I will exercise some self-control here and not make a snarky comment about that title, because I'm sure people could make snarky comments about my title or your title.
Mhm.
And frankly, it's not the titles that are most important. But I guess I'm kind of pointing that out because just because someone has credentials doesn't mean they're a good source of wisdom and knowledge. Okay. And we would say the same thing about ourselves. I mean, hopefully for our regular listeners who are here week in and week out, over time, we've become a trusted voice because despite whatever credentials we have, you are seeing wisdom being, kind of dispensed and offered. So we're hoping that you feel that way. But anyway, I guess I want to help parents to pause sometimes when you hear certified life coach or even PhD or, those author, writer. there's a lot of bad stuff out there, particularly as a Christian parent operating on a Christian worldview. And so, I mean, Coach M, who's I'm sure very well-intentioned, but she, in this video on dealing with a disrespectful teenager, offers 3 pieces of advice, 3 steps that you can take. In fact, she says that she's going to give us the hard truth about where that disrespect is coming from. And then she gives us the first piece of advice. Here it is. Watch this or listen to this.
Okay, you've had it. You're constantly battling with your teenager over simple tasks like having them clean their room or do their homework or get off their phone for more than 5 minutes. You ask them to do one tiny thing that they already should be doing, and they give you attitude and pushback. They may even raise their voice at you and roll their eyes and tell you no, which pisses you off to the point that you take away their phone or their driving privileges. And then eventually they cave in and do what you ask them to do. But the whole cycle repeats itself over and over and over. You feel like what you're currently doing just really isn't working. And you would be right. The first thing we as parents have to understand is where our teenagers' disrespect is really coming from. Disrespect equals disconnection. And disconnection is the absence of the 3 elements that create connection, which are empathy, curiosity, and vulnerability. So you have to ask yourself these questions. What does my heart-to-heart connection with my teenager really look like? And what am I doing every day to build and nurture that connection? Now, if your answer includes any variation of I do so much for them, I take them everywhere they want to go, like to the mall to meet their friends, soccer practice every night, I allow their friends to come over and hang out, I want you to stop and ask yourself if doing any of these physical, tangible things is enough to create the heart-to-heart connection that you desire with your teenager. Remember, disrespect is occurring with your teenager because that heart-to-heart connection either doesn't exist right now or hasn't been nurtured and isn't growing. I'm going to tell you right now, when you work on developing that heart-to-heart connection, which means that your teenager feels heard, seen, and valued, the disrespect will dissipate. It will no longer exist at all. Imagine that for a moment. That's exactly what you want, for there to be peace in your home, for your relationship with your teenager to be stronger, deeper, and actually enjoyable, right? Well, the first key in achieving this is through vulnerable communication. This is about you getting in touch with your heart first before talking to your teenager, so that you're challenging your fears, you're addressing your triggers before engaging with your teen. You always want to process your emotions first. By doing this, you reduce the amount of damage that you might cause the relationship. Remember, connection is the ultimate goal here, which eradicates disrespect. If you want the exact steps for processing your emotions the right way, check out the video here or click on the link below in the description. We have to be deliberate in how we create and maintain connection with our kids. It's a continual process, even when they become adults. It's something that we have to constantly work at improving. Part of vulnerable communication is asking yourself the question, are the thoughts I'm having coming from a place of fear or love? Now, parenting from a place of love can be hard to distinguish from parenting out of fear, because the parenting dynamic, as you know, is intertwined with both fear and love, much more than any other relationship that we can have with anyone. So we have to become good at teasing the fear out of our thoughts and actions. And what's great about vulnerable communication is that we actually express our fear to our teenager. It could sound something like this. I know how badly you want to go to the party, but I'm feeling a little scared about it. My fear is that you could be pressured into doing something unsafe. And although I know that you're a leader and not a follower, I also know how easy it can be to try something when everyone else is doing it. And studies show that when teenagers get together, their tolerance for risk increases significantly. I just saw an article about that the other day. So as you can imagine, I'm feeling pretty fearful about this party. I love you so much, and I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you. By communicating this way, you're being vulnerable with your heart. You're letting your teen know your struggle in the situation. And it gives you both an opportunity to have a more heartfelt conversation, which your teenager will respect a whole lot more than you just telling them that they can or can't do something.
Okay, there's the first bit of advice. Disrespect equals disconnection, or what through this kind of first point, she talks about the heart-to-heart connection. So she says the disrespect from teenagers, the source of that is primarily, if not always, and I think that's her kind of her stronger view, it's always because of some kind of disconnection, heart-to-heart disconnection between parent and child, and that we're missing then these three things: empathy, curiosity, and vulnerability. So therefore, the very first question you as a parent need to ask when it comes to disrespectful teenagers is, what am I doing every day to build and nurture that connection? Okay. Now, she goes on to make a kind of this larger, I think, bold claim. She says, when you work on developing that heart-to-heart connection, which means that your teenager feels heard, seen, and valued, the disrespect will dissipate. It will no longer exist at all. That's what she says in this first point.
That is a big promise.
That is I guarantee you that is a promise she cannot keep either.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah. And this is the thing. When we hear some of this advice online, and you hear someone telling you that if you do this, if you just keep that heart-to-heart connection with your kid, that all disrespect will disappear and it will no longer exist at all, stop and let your Christian worldview inform you. And what I think it will inform us is that that's not true. Okay, so that's bad advice, what she's offering there, taken as the primary point, the first point that she wants to emphasize. And really, she's kind of putting it back on the parent, which now, again, we're going to offer, I think, a balanced view. Certainly parents can play into this, but I think a lot of times this kind of advice, it looks primarily at the parent and places all blame, whether it's explicit or implicit, on the parent. And I think a lot of this stuff, parents hear this kind of thing and right away, man, the guilt comes rushing in. Your kid is being disrespectful simply because you aren't connecting with them.
Yeah. Well, she diagnoses the problem right in the beginning. Disrespect means disconnection. So she says this is the source of disrespect. So starting right there, you have to ask, is that true? And this source, this disconnection blame, this is rampant throughout modern parenting advice, and it's connected to this overly therapeutic culture that we live in. And so all bad behavior is just connected to all bad behavior is connected to relational disconnect.
Yeah, and relational unmet needs.
Exactly. And so you simply fix that and all problems go away. And that's why she feels confident in overpromising. I'm saying overpromising because it is an overpromise. Because if anyone tells you that you do this and all disrespect will go away, you should not trust that person anymore.
Yeah.
Because that is something they cannot promise you. No one can promise you that. And because, of course, from the Christian worldview, which is our view, from the biblical worldview that we think reflects reality, we know that the source of disrespect is not simply disconnection.
And don't tell the audience what it is.
Okay,
because we're coming to that.
Okay.
Don't give away our gold mine here.
Okay, but you got me started, so then it's hard to stop.
I know. So that's the first thing she offers. Coach M offers a second bit of advice. Watch or listen to this.
The second key when dealing with disrespectful behavior is to establish or reestablish your boundaries. If you're constantly trying to appease your teenager, letting them do whatever they want to do, you have perpetuated a sense of entitlement in your teen, and the disrespectful behavior pops up when they're not getting what they want. And the more that you try to appease them, the more you are teaching them that they should feel entitled. If someone always lets you have your way, and then all of a sudden they're not letting you have what you want, of course you're going to become upset. Now just imagine if that happens to someone who has a teenage brain. Those upset feelings will most likely manifest as anger, indignant, rude, disrespectful behavior, because they want what they've always gotten and they feel entitled to it. If you haven't done a good job of creating your boundaries around your teen's behavior, then it's time to reestablish those boundaries. Remember, a boundary isn't about what the other person should or shouldn't do. You have absolutely no control over that. Your boundaries are about what you will do when other people are doing what they do. If your teen is raising their voice at you, you simply decide what you will do when that happens and let your teen know. It could look something like this. I refuse to engage with anyone who is raising their voice at me. I deserve to be treated better. So I'm going to remove myself from this conversation, but when you're ready to have a healthy, respectful conversation, please let me know. Again, this isn't about trying to control what your teen is or isn't doing. It's about deciding what you will do in situations where you are being treated poorly or being disrespected.
So here it is. Second, you have to, quote, establish or reestablish your boundaries. Now, at first listen, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Like boundaries are
Sounds
healthy. We need boundaries.
Yeah.
This is where the devil is in the details. This is why you've got to ask, what do you mean by boundaries? Because there's a lot of people, and we've talked about this before, and as we evaluate kind of the modern gentle parenting movement, there's a lot of talk about boundaries. Well, that's not enough. You have to ask, what do you mean by boundaries? And how do you enforce those boundaries? Okay, so here is what she says. I'll quote her here. A boundary is not about what the other person should or shouldn't do. Your boundaries are about what you will do when others are doing what they do. So notice this is the definition of boundary, which is a redefining of the traditional view of boundary. Like a boundary, like you shouldn't do this. You've crossed over the boundary. No, what it's about is what you're going to do when they do whatever they're going to do. So, for example, she says a teen is being disrespectful to you. You just say, well, I'm going to remove myself from this conversation until you can then eventually be respectful. Mm-hmm. So it's about what you're doing, not there's no boundary on what they're doing. Which I think she'll later come back and contradict, but that's the point. Okay, this is what it means to establish or reestablish a boundary.
Yeah, which this strikes me as again bad advice because it's rooted in the idea of boundaries that you would have with other adults. In other words, other people that you don't get to dictate how they live. And so a lot of the boundary books, even the Christian boundary books, will define boundaries this way when it comes to adult relationships. And so it's how do you have boundaries within yourself of I'm not going to allow another adult to treat me this way, but you realize I can't control this other adult. The relationship you have with your child, even a child who's no longer a child but a young adult, but it still is the parent-child relationship, is different and unique than other relationships that you have with adults.
Yeah. And of course, there's different stages in that relationship between parent and child, but definitely early on, there is the authority given to parents to dictate what a child should do. And I know modern parental units out there hear such language, me using something like that, and they think, oh my gosh, no. And we have been so influenced and shaped by modern therapeutic parenting practices and techniques and views. So that's the second thing Coach M says. And then the third piece of advice is this.
The third key is a big one. Stop giving advice and telling your teenager what to do. Your teen's disrespectful behavior is an indication that they don't feel like you understand them or that you even care to understand them. Let that sink in for just a minute. Can you imagine having a relationship with someone, maybe a boss, a friend, your partner, where you feel like they don't understand you or even care to understand you? That your needs don't really matter and what you say or do is really inconsequential? Your struggles, your pain, your hardships aren't that big of a deal? Would you have much respect for someone who treated you that way? This is exactly how your teenager feels most of the time. It's sad, but it's true. The quickest way to let your teen know that you care, that their needs are just as important as anyone else's, is to stop telling them what to do. Stop giving them well-meaning advice and instead empower them. Guide them by asking the right questions. If you want more help on the right questions to ask, check out the video here and it's linked in the description below. You want to get them to think about decisions ahead of time, become a better problem solver, and actually make the decision they think is best for them, even if it's not what you think they should do. This is tough, I know, but here's the important part. No matter what their decision is, allow the consequences of that decision to play out, however it needs to. Giving your teen more autonomy over their decisions allows you to build a culture of mutual respect within your home. Your teen feels respected, feels like their needs are important to you, which in turn helps them to see your needs a little clearer as well. Obviously, this doesn't mean you let your teen do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it. There are always consequences to every decision that we make, and we have to let those play out for our children without stepping in, without shielding them, without letting them off the hook. So, not telling them what to do or giving advice doesn't mean a hands-off approach to parenting. It's actually the complete opposite. It's a full hands-on approach to parenting through guiding, not control.
Okay, so according to Coach M, thirdly, you stop giving advice and telling your teenager what to do. All right. Well, this is where you're going to start seeing the cultural views, the expressive individualism. She says, quote, your teen's disrespectful behavior is indication that they don't feel like you understand them or care to understand them. And later on says this is how your teen feels most of the time. Okay, Erin, please stop giving advice to your teenagers and telling them what to do.
That's not going to happen because
you're a dictator.
That is such terrible advice. Again, confusing the relationship of parent and child and the relationships between adults and other adults. With other adults, you don't tell them what to do. Mm. You don't have that authority in another adult's life unless they're your employer or something like that. Or employee, something like that. So unless you're in some type of authority relationship, we don't get to tell other adults what to do.
Yeah.
So it's confusing the relationship, and I think just completely misdiagnosing that age. And to say just blanketly that all teenagers feel like their parents don't understand. How I would want to say to her, how do you know that?
Yeah.
You know that because you've talked to some teenagers, and we all know when we were teenagers, we would often complain, Mom just doesn't understand. I remember saying that. What was the context of me saying that? Oh, I wanted to go out on a school night, and my mom said I had homework and needed to go to bed. And so my mom didn't understand. What did she not understand? The longings of my heart to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah. You were a pretty sinful teenager.
Oh my word. And so they don't think their parents understand. That assumes something's wrong with the parent, not the teen who maybe doesn't understand that their parent has wisdom that they might not have.
Yeah.
And that this kind of life instruction and wisdom is necessary and important for us to pass down to our kids. So when someone says your kids don't need your advice, that should be a red flag that they don't understand the nature of the parent-child relationship.
Yeah. And it if you think about it, it could be that the parent actually understands better than the kid. Right.
It's a remote possibility.
And they understand, we were once there. We understand the folly of youth, the foolishness of youth. No, we understand very well. We understand the wrong desires or motivations to do X, Y, or Z. And that's why we do have to give advice. We do have to tell teenagers what to do. Right. I think you highlighted such an important point. This is like taking and viewing the child as like this autonomous adult person, or you just think about the view of autonomy and self authority that is just seems implicit in this.
Yes.
And, later on, she says, let them experience the natural consequences of their decisions. And, but even that hedges on that. This is where if you listen to the whole thing, you see some inconsistencies bubbling up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's at least in this short video, the only consequence she's going to offer. Not that you actually have some serious consequences. No, let the natural consequences take over. And I think, and I'm not saying this about Coach M, but I think when you hear that, a lot of us, that might be appealing just to let the natural consequences take over. Which we would agree there should be, hey, let your kids experience some of the natural consequences of their behavior. Absolutely. But sometimes we want to help teach and instruct them before they experience those natural consequences, because that can get a lot worse. But it takes some courage and fortitude, strength to enforce that. And some of us are like, hey, this might get me off the hook a little bit from doing things that I don't like to do, because I get the impulse of not wanting my kid not to like me kind of thing. So we have to battle that.
Yes. So I want to make a point here, because at an event not too long ago, I had a mom come up and ask me about her 3 boys. And she with sincere heart said, isn't there just natural consequences that can happen when my boys disobey me that I don't have to enforce, but they're just natural consequences? And my sad answer to her was no, because that is kind of the nature of childhood. If you have a good childhood, you are kind of shielded from the natural consequences of your foolishness as a child. And so your parents, if they're good parents, kind of shield you from natural consequences of, for example, not knowing how to manage money. The good thing is, when you're a kid, you don't have to worry about it. You're going to have food on your table and a house to live in because your parents know how to manage money and they're taking care of you. And so even in the teen years, as they're starting to get towards maturity and adulthood, they are still shielded in some real ways from natural consequences. And so that's why oftentimes as parents, we have to give consequences that will reflect what natural consequences are coming in adult life. That's the whole point. We're trying to teach them how to live and be in relationship, and we want it to be instructive. And so we have to show them, when you act certain ways, consequences will follow.
Yeah, and 2 things. We acknowledge that there are different levels of development.
Absolutely.
And so you're thinking like kind of maybe in shield. When they're younger, you're shielding them from a lot more. As they get older, you don't stop shielding them, but you do shield them from less.
Yes.
Right? So we're acknowledging that until one day they get to the point where you can't shield them at all.
Yeah.
But then
let me give one quick example of that. Okay, so this is like when it comes to school. The preschooler, mom and dad do a lot for the preschooler. We pack their lunch. We make sure they have what they need for preschool that day.
We pack their lunch?
Well, I packed their lunch.
I don't remember that. That's not a memory I have.
As they get older, you start teaching them how to pack their own backpack for school. Do you remember today's Valentine's Day? Did you get the Valentines we worked on? These sorts of things. So you're reminding them. But then by the time they're in junior high and high school, you're starting to let them face the consequences of forgetting their homework, for example, or you really should, mom and dad, because this is the natural growing and we don't want to shield them and keep holding their hand. So that's just one example of, we understand the child develops. And so, you're offering less and less help and protection, and they are being exposed more and more to real life and the consequences of that.
And the second thing is that God himself lays out and instructs us on the potential consequences. I mean, you think of like the the wisdom literature of Scripture,
Mm.
the book of Proverbs. Do this, and here's the positive consequences. Do this, here are the negative consequences. And he instructs us on those things so that we don't have to experience all of the natural consequences of those bad things. You don't just have to learn by consequences.
Mhm.
You can actually learn by instruction and wisdom
Yeah.
and not have to suffer those things.
Mhm.
So even God models that for us. And so we want to do that as well as we can for our kids. And there will be plenty of kids who do take that instruction,
Mhm.
who listen when advice is given. And so, so God models this for us as well. Okay, essentially, a lot of the modern parenting advice when it comes to dealing with a disrespectful teenager puts the blame on the parents.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it's the parents' fault,
Yeah.
right?
I think just fundamentally, it starts right at the beginning with a misdiagnosis of the problem and then goes from there.
Yeah, well, so that's why in this podcast today, we have got to build out a framework
Mhm.
or remind ourselves of the framework. And this is where I think this is our hopefully our pattern and our habit here on the Maven Parent Podcast is a lot of times we're looking for the quick fix. We're looking for the 2 practical steps that I can implement right now. And there's a place for some of that, but when it comes to dealing with the complex, challenging task of parenting complex human beings, there's no quick fix.
Yeah.
And
Especially hormone changing teens.
yeah, especially when we're
this
talking about
stage
teens.
of life, as we all can remember, is difficult to navigate. Your body is changing a lot. You are changing a lot, and it just kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah. And so we're going to get to practical things. We're going to lay out 10 practical things that we can do.
Are you going to guarantee that
Parents.
it's going to work?
And I actually will offer a money back guarantee that this will work. and it
Coach
will-
M's nothing. She only had one guarantee.
That's
You're
right.
offering 10.
Well, I'm starting a new YouTube channel called Coach B. And Coach B is going to give you a money back guarantee. Okay. No, but so what we want to start with is culture and worldview.
Mhm.
So let's start with culture. There are cultural considerations to think about before we really get into the practicals of dealing with a disrespectful teenager. And number one, we have to remember culture is shaping our kids. That's going to be part of the battle, is living in a culture that shapes our kids. So number one, this first point is you have self-expression being the highest good a lot of times in a person's life.
Mhm.
The expressive individualism, the authority of the self, that leads to this view that, well, expressing what's in here, which is authoritative, is the highest good then, and everyone around me is supposed to kind of go along with that.
Yeah.
That is a cultural force shaping our kids. Self-expression is the highest good. Okay, tie this into disrespect. Well, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling upset, and this is who I am, this is where I'm at. I'm just, or the kind of the view of these coaching or these parenting influencers is, well, this is just where you're at, and your kid's disconnected, and because they're expressing themselves and all of this kind of thing.
Yeah. And you're right. It connects their bad behavior with something that we've done wrong. Fundamentally, that's how she diagnoses it.
Yeah.
But you think, here would be a good thought experiment, listener. Think about your kids, the kids in your home, your grandkids, the kids in your church. Where in culture are they nurtured to think of other people more highly than themselves? What Philippians talks about, amongst other places.
That's
where in
a really
culture
good question, I think.
are they ever pushed to think, people around me I ought to think of as more important than myself and my own desire.
That question really helps us to see, I think, the magnitude of the problem, because you're thinking nowhere.
It's certainly, I mean, it used to be in sports, you know, your teammate, you think about your teammates, but even in sports, that a lot of time modern sports is not about, you know, there's no I in team, but nowadays everything's about you anyway. And it, even in sports, it's become that too. But if you think of something, listener, please write in and let us know. I can think of the only place being the scriptures and hopefully your church, but I don't even know if modern youth groups are teaching young people to turn their hearts not towards themselves, but to look at their parents as more important than themselves.
Yeah. And you see how then, okay.
Or not just their parents, obviously other people around them, but certainly not less than their parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So self-expression being the highest good, then you can see how that's related to then the entitlement we have.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm entitled to your affirmation. Like I don't have to earn that. I'm just entitled to it because this is who I am as I express myself. And think about that old phrase, respect is earned. I mean, that has been cast by the wayside. And, you know, so you have this entitlement. So then when I don't get what I want, I'm justified in being disrespectful to the person who's saying no to me or who's preventing me from that.
Yeah.
And so then you just see then how disrespect is normalized in our culture. It just becomes the norm. And what happens is it lowers the expectations we have even for our own kids. Like, oh, this is just what teens do. Because it's so pervasive, it's all around us. So then it just is normalized.
Yeah.
And then we don't take it as seriously as we should take it. So this is the kind of stuff we have to think about in terms of culture and culture shaping us and influencing us on this particular issue. Okay, now as Christians, we also want to build out the framework of the Christian worldview, or at least remind ourselves, right? Because we're in a thoroughly secular age. So we're going to have to constantly remind ourselves of the framework, the Christian worldview framework, that then takes this particular issue of teens and disrespect and builds out the proper framework through which we can then view this issue. So number one, God exists. There's an almighty creator of the universe, and he is the highest authority. And number two, then, first and foremost, we were created and designed to love and obey him, right? So the structure of the universe we live in is one of hierarchy, authority. God is the sovereign ruler of the universe. And ultimately, he will not put up with disrespect. Which leads us right to the third one. There are eternal rewards and consequences for those who reject the authority of God. Okay, so we have a theistic universe that we live in that frames this big time, because that's going to help us understand our task as parents, which we'll get to in a second. But so fourthly, we're rebels. We're sinners in our fallen human nature. We all are going to struggle with sin. A lot of modern parenting, just implied or explicitly stated, is that we are basically good in a moral sense.
Yeah, if you just connect with your kid, I mean, that's what her promise is rooted in. And this is why we know it's going to fail, because we aren't basically good. So she's promising you just stay connected with your kid. You will never experience disrespect from them. And this is how we can guarantee the opposite to you.
Money back guarantee
Money
from
back
Erin
guarantee
Kunkel.
is that even when you are connected, your child and you will struggle with sin. And actually part of sin entering the world, as I'm listening to you break down the theological points, part of sin coming into the world is it disconnected us. It disconnected us from God, first and foremost. But then it caused disconnection in human relationships, right? Immediately, Adam and Eve, boom, disconnected, blaming each other, and there you go. And so could your teen's moment of disrespect be rooted in feeling disconnected from you, Mom? Possibly. Sure. But that is not what all disrespect is rooted in. And disconnection is a part of the effect of sin. And it's something that we, this side of heaven, are going to experience in every single relationship.
Yeah.
Even our relationship with God.
Well, this is where you see how our theology actually gives us deeper, more expansive understandings of these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, disconnection is a reality, but there's a deeper understanding of where that disconnection comes from. And that actually the disconnection is one of many potential causes. It's not the only cause for disrespect, but it's all rooted in this rebellious sinfulness of human beings. I mean, listen to the psalmist in Psalm 51:5. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. In fact, I read this passage to you every single day, honey, because I think you need to be reminded that you were brought forth in iniquity, right? No, but this is the proper place to start with our view of our kids. Apart from Christ, you are a sinner. That's your primary identity. You are in Adam. You are not in Christ, right? And even when you're in Christ, the effects are still there. The rebellion is still there. The rebellious child, which disrespect is an expression of that rebellion, is someone who must understand that they are not in charge. And they need to understand that not just mom and dad are in charge, right? No, first and foremost, God's actually in charge. God is the highest authority. And then mom and dad are in charge in virtue of the structure of the universe, the design of God for human families. And so it's the rebellion. Disrespect is rooted in, first and foremost, our sinful rebellion, ultimately against our Creator. And so this is one of the ways it's gonna kind of cash itself out in human relationships. And we know disrespect is deeply intertwined with disobedience. And this is where, as we're kind of talking this out, the culture may downplay disrespect, and what we're doing is, I don't know, maybe we're
elevating.
I'm going to create a new word. We're upplaying. We're not downplaying. We're upplaying. We're saying, no, actually disrespect is a serious matter.
Yes.
If you think about it, I mean, you go to the sin of humanity. Adam and Eve disrespect God's laws that leads to their disobedience. Lying, stealing, cheating, they stem from an attitude of disrespect for someone or something.
Yes.
Right? And so disrespect of parents is a serious issue from children who are sinful in their fallen human nature.
And I think that this is so important, parents, for us to understand that disrespect, these discipline type issues with our kids, is connected to their spiritual formation. And we do not connect that for ourselves. But it should be part of our instruction and correction with our kids. We ought to connect it for them too and say, I understand you want to rebel and you want your own way. I understand that because I actually have the same struggle in my own heart. But this is what we have to learn to control and about ourselves, because this is a spiritual issue. This affects this area of disrespect can and will affect their relationship with God, the most important relationship they'll have.
That's why disrespect is a weighty issue.
Yeah.
And if you see the appropriate connection between disrespect and disobedience, then that helps you to see why this is so serious. You know, you look in Romans chapter 1 and you see this progression of sin, and then Paul kind of ends chapter 1 with a list of these things that, you know, he gives people over in verse 28 to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. And then he lists things like unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, malice, gossip, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, and then disobedient to parents. I mean, it's just amazing that disobedience to parents is listed among these serious sins, right? So there's a gravity to this issue. And so
The sin and the sin of the child, and I'm not beating up on the child here, but I'm just saying this Coach M says their disobedient is actually your sin, parent. And scripture says disobedience to parent is your when you're disobedient to your parents, that's your sin.
Yeah.
That isn't your parents' sin.
Yeah. So there's a half truth.
Do you
there.
get what I'm saying? She's putting the blame on the parent for the child's sin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's where we'd say, well, actually, no, we're all to blame, right? we all as individuals are sinners. And so we all struggle with sin. So we want to certainly say that our kids struggle with sin. And at the same time, we also struggle with sin.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to help us frame this issue. Now, fifthly, children have an obligation to obey their parents.
What?
Right. So Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1.
This is very counterculture. Children have a duty to their parents.
Crazy. The Bible turns out to be countercultural.
It does. But this idea that children have any duty, children include, and we would include teens in that, have obligations to their parents when it comes to behavior.
Yeah. Well, Ephesians 6, 1 and 2, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. So obedience and honor are connected. And we know that disrespect is the opposite of honoring your parents. So this is just a fundamental biblical command, biblical principle. The duty of the child is to respect and obey their parents, right? That's the biblical standard for children. Honor your parents. This is scripture. And again, we have to remind ourselves of these things because the world that we live in does not hold this view. Okay. Now, so there's that part of it. Then there's other relevant commands of scripture. Philippians chapter 2, verse 14, do all things without grumbling, right? There's another command. And again, we're not saying that just applies to the kid. That applies to us as well, but it also applies to the kid. And then you've got Proverbs 6, which talks about there are 6 things which the Lord hates, 7 which are an abomination to him. And he talks about haughty eyes. Right? Haughty can be defined as this like superior looking down upon or a disdain. And that is clearly involved with the disrespect when that teenager rolls their eyes or looks at you with a sneer, right? Haughty eyes. Disrespectful behavior of a teen directly contradicts the biblical teaching. And we got to get clear on that. And so the emphasis of scripture and this really for modern Christians even who emphasize so much of the heart, we'd say, and maybe someone thinks, when we talk about obedience, we're just talking about the behavior. No, these are deeply connected because our emphasis on obedience is not merely to get compliance out of the kid. We know that it's about cultivating, right, the whole soul of them: mind, affections, attitude, emotions, the heart. And when you focus on behavior, you actually are also focusing on the heart and the habits of the heart, right? Because how you act reveals the heart. How you act also shapes the heart. And so, we want to kind of sketch out, when we talk about obedience to parents, the whole person's involved in that. The whole child's involved in that.
Yeah. And you think about, I mean, as mature adults understand this, obedience isn't just about, okay, just comply, kid, okay, kind of thing. But mature adults understand that learning compliance to authorities and learning, for example, how to behave rightly even when you don't feel it is the good training that children need. Because you think about, our relationship, honey, and you think about
and
how
the good training that you've done with me. Is that what you're going to refer to?
I can't help but think of that. But you think about how when we are disconnected, you and I, and does that then give me, for example, just the right to just be rude and say whatever I want to say? Now,
no, it sure does not, but you seem to think it does.
And you think too about times where we are connected. Maybe we just went on a date night. We had good conversation, and then something can happen and one of us could be rude to each other. And we are connected. Do not.
Oh no, I'm agreeing strongly with
strongly.
you, honey.
But you think about how the training my parents gave me when I was a teen who was disrespectful, and my parents didn't just allow me to treat them that way, how that was actually good training that I needed to help me to act rightly even when I didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And to treat others respectfully even when I didn't feel like it. Now, of course, I've messed up. You've messed up in that. We've talked rudely to each other, but then it doesn't mean that then we get to sit and say, well, I was disconnected from you. So the fact that I was rude is justified. We have, if we've gotten good training, we realize, okay, I have to apologize for how I acted, regardless of what I was feeling. Now, the disconnection, again, might be there, and that might need to be addressed. And we'll talk about some practical things to do.
Well, what you just said helps me. It made me think about how we, modern parenting, modern child raising lets us off the hook as individuals. And it conditions us not to take responsibility for our own actions and to blame others. As a child, I am just a victim of my parents' irresponsibility. Yeah. And you hear that a ton in these parenting influencers looking back at their childhood parents. And then ripping on their parents, not honoring their parents. Yeah. Which all this brings us to, okay, the last point. But first, before we get to that last point, realize that what we've said so far, I think, helps us to see that disrespect is serious business. It's not something to just let slip. And then lastly, okay, parents have an obligation and a privilege to lead, guide, and discipline their children, right? Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. Ephesians, right? Ephesians chapter 6. Of course, it talks about children obeying parents, honoring mother and father. But fathers, verse 4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So parents aren't off the hook here, but we play this primary role, this vital role in helping to move our kids from being disrespectful teens to being respectful teens who ultimately honor the Lord with their words and their actions.
So let's pause right here in the conversation, because we want to go through some practical things. Now that we've thought through it biblically, philosophically, now let's say, okay, but how do you live that out with teens? So let's talk about some of that in the next episode.
MAVEN exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. Through your generous financial partnership with MAVEN, you are having an impact on the lives of students and families across the country. To become a monthly partner, visit maventruth.com and click on the donate button.